Hello Panthers, here to talk about the miter cuts that you guys have to make. And the miter cuts happen on part A and part B, where they kind of come together up in the corner. And so a mitered cut is really just defined as two angled pieces coming together to make a 90-degree corner. And there are certainly other options. Sometimes if you're making a frame, you might do like a 120-degree corner, something like that. For our project though, we've got a 90-degree corner between A and B. So I found a piece of scrap wood that is the same dimensions as your part A's. It's the rough cut part A. So 12 inches long, 3 inches wide, 1.25 inches thick, okay? And so what you'd have to do is make the mitered cut on this, and that's what I'm gonna talk to you about, is that process. We purposely left this long to help us to be more accurate with this cut. So what we're gonna do is, it's a 1/2 inch long right now. I'm gonna set my miter saw over here up on a 45-degree angle, and I'm gonna cut as close to the end as possible, and I'll show you that in a second. I'm gonna cut as close to the end as possible, and then, so on that 45-degree cut, I don't have to be as accurate. I just gotta be close to the end. And then I'm gonna measure back from that, mark at 11.5, and make a straight cut. So where I have to be super accurate is just on a normal straight cut. But we've left ourselves a little bit of room to be able to make that mitered corner. So I'll take you guys over to the miter saw here and we will do that. So we're gonna do the DeWalt, and what I decided is we'll actually make the miter cuts on part A and part B. And so I'll do A first on this saw, and then I'll do part B on the Hitachi green miter saw in just a second. So for this saw, what we wanna do to set it up to 45 degrees for our miter is we lift up on that lever, and then we're gonna push down on the thumb pad, and we're gonna bring it over to 45 degrees, let it go so it's right there. There's a little red indicator arrow on the 45, and then I lock it in place. I like to take the angle away from my hold hand. So I'm gonna be holding the board here, so I like to take the angle tilted away from my hand. If I went the other way, you might get a good cut, but the blade's a lot closer to your hand, just makes it a little bit trickier to do. And so now I'm gonna take this board, and the goal is gonna be, show you my edge there, to make an angled cut like that. And the only thing I have to make sure I do is get it past this little edge here. Oops, sorry. I gotta make sure I hit somewhere between that mark and the end. Okay, and I'm gonna try and keep it close to the end so that we get a nice clean cut there, and I'm outside of my 11.5. So it's gonna be loud for a second. Doing everything the same, my hand's not in the trigger to line up my cut. I'm bringing it down to the end and lining it up just like we would do on a straight and flat cut. Okay, I got it where I want it. Get my hand in place so my fingers are on top, my thumb's pushing in. Here's the loud part. And so I was holding that not flat like usual, I was holding it up vertically, and you can see there, so that's our flat cut, okay? And that's all there is to this one. Okay, so now we have this 45 on here, right? And now to be accurate, this is the reason that we do this. I can measure from that 45. I don't have to worry about being accurate with that cut. I can measure from there. Now I'm making a very small, neat mark. At 11.5. Grab my square, squaring it up there, using it right there, not holding the blade, just holding the handle. And now I simply take this over to the miter saw and make a straight cut right on my 11.5. It's way more, it's way more accurate trying to make this straight cut with a nice line like this than trying to be perfect on a 45 and hit that. So that's why we do this method. Okay, and now we'll do part B. So on our Hitachi saw, it's a little bit different. To loosen it up, to unlock it, lefty-loosey. Then I pull up on this trigger underneath and I move this over. Got a couple things in the way back here. Just move those to the other side. And then I move it to 45. There's a little indicator right here. And then I lock it back in place so it stays at 45, all right? And now with my part B here, I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm just gonna make my 45-degree cut, my miter, real close to the end, and then we can measure back. So I'm doing everything the exact same, holding it up against the fence, not touching the trigger, bringing it down, and lining it up. So I'm as close to the end as I can there and still making sure that I get a full cut. My fingers are on top, holding it down. My thumb is pushing it in against the fence, and it's about to get loud. Okay, so there's my 45-degree corner. And now we measure back, and this is part B now. So I'm going to 15 3/4. So I've got my mitered end here. Making my mark at 15 3/4. Whoops, kind of covering it up there on you. And this piece is a lot longer because I found this in the scrap barrel. And so yours won't be this long. You've only got a 1/2 inch there. I had a lot of material because I found it in the barrel. But then I'm grabbing my square. And now I just straight cut that. And that piece would be to 15 3/4 with the mitered end. And eventually when we put this together, that's what we're gonna make right there.